Welcome to episode 2 of Now You're Playing with Podcast. I know it's been several months now since episode 1 was released back in October, and we've had some ups and downs since then. We're trying to get this podcast rolling. I'm here. I'm Chris, by the way.
And I'm Tatton.
And, Tatton had some family emergencies. We had Christmas. We have jobs. We have families. I don't know. I don't want to get too far into it, but we're here. The plan, I think, is we're going to do this monthly. And we've got a great segment called Video Game Roulette, about 5 or 6 minute segment that we're planning on doing weekly in addition to the monthly podcast. So I think we'll have new content once a week. That's our goal. And once we get this train moving, I think we get the whole setup going. We have new audio equipment, so it's going to get better quality-wise.
Yeah, a lot of that's going to depend on how we're learning how to use it. But, the hope is that it's going to keep getting better and better. You guys will keep giving us feedback. We'll take all of that into account and hopefully give you guys a better show. And the Video Game Roulette, they are a blast to record. I'm really hoping that everybody really enjoys those as much as we enjoy putting them together.
And before we start the show, do want to do a couple shout-outs. One to Retro Gaming Roundup. They did a fantastic review of episode 1 on one of their shows. I believe it's the November show or December show. Probably November show. You ran into Scott, actually, at MagFest a week or so ago.
I did, and he was still equally as excited about that show, and I went. It was funny because he's like, "Oh, you guys are the ones who did that," and he was telling us the stories about the Radio Shack and stuff, which was really awesome. It was neat to be able to see him, and
I didn't really even solicit. I didn't send it into their podcast asking to mention us. I just put it on their message boards, for people to listen. Here's ours. Take a listen, and they mentioned it on their show without even us soliciting them. And another bigger shout-out would probably go to Matt Cohen over at Smodcast Network. I was a guest this past week on Bagged and Boarded, and we had a 2-hour manic conversation about all things old video games and the state of the new stuff. And I'm sure many of you listening to this are probably here because of my conversation with Matt. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy it. I hope to duplicate that. I hope you stay around and are entertained. And we're working to get on iTunes. We got RSS feed, so we're officially a podcast now.
We have the RSS, so we're officially a podcast. We still working on getting into iTunes, but that'll follow shortly.
All right, so we'll get in episode 2. Episode 2, more of a shooting the shit episode. We're talking with Cory, and the subject basically, it was this article we read about the best year in gaming, and it's like the top 6 years, and all but one was after 1995.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because we were all really fired up about this article before we met, and then we actually had a really interesting outcome at the end of the podcast, a fun revelation. So it'll be a good listen.
It's conversation. It's what we do. It's what the whole point of the podcast is. So listen up. And thanks for listening.
Well, actually, before we start, I do want to make an apology because I believe at some point during this podcast, I was like, oh, I totally know exactly what I'm talking about. And I know when the 360 and the PS3 and the Wii was released. And everybody followed my numbers, and I'm pretty sure I'm a year off on those. I'm pretty sure in the podcast I'm referencing the Wii getting released in 2000, or the Wii and the PS3 getting released in 2007, and then the Xbox getting released in 2006, and that was very wrong. So, apologize in advance. Please don't hate me on the message board.
Hate him anyway. Bye.
Bye.
Now you're playing with podcast.
All right, here we are. We got Cory here.
Hey.
Topic we came up with for this show. There's an article on Yahoo Games by Ben Silverman. He lists the 6 best years in video game history. I couldn't find his actual bio on Yahoo Games. I know it's Yahoo, but I'm going to call it Yahoo for the comedic effect.
It's cracking me up already.
Apparently, he's an older guy, industry guy. So that's probably because he's in the business side. That's where his biases come through. But
Number 5, he's got 19. Okay, these are the best years in video game history, just, performance years. Number 5 is 1980. Tied for number 4 is 1991 and 1996. Number 3 is 2001. Number 2 is 2007. Number 1 is 1998. So my initial reaction was, goddamn fucking N64, Gen 64 kids. Goddamn N64. Of course, there's a big honking picture of the Ocarina of Time. The company was 1998. And then in 1996, he's got Tomb Raider posted there, but that's what the year the N64 was released. Am I right? 96? Yeah.
Yeah, 96 in the States.
2001, that's Xbox GameCube year, Halo.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you the difference between 2007 and any other year. I guess, was that the PS3 year? Wii year?
2007 would have been, PS3 and Wii both that year, because 2006 would have been the year that the 360 was launched, which I would have counted that year as a bigger year than Wii and PS3, to be honest, but...
I don't know. The 360 had plenty of issues when it launched. It didn't really... none of those launched with anything other than the Wii.
I remember
playing,
the 360 launched. The best game was...
Perfect Dark?
Geometry Wars.
Geometry Wars. That's the whole reason why I bought it.
Right. I had to say Perfect Dark because that game sucks so bad.
Cameo. That was the other... Cameo? What was
Cameo?
it?
Yeah.
The rare... how they've fallen from grace since Nintendo dropped them like a rock, or they pick up... whatever that drama was, I don't really care too much.
Yeah.
Because, but anyway, the basic gist is N64. The kids, I like to call them Gen 64 kids. And it's understandable, but I don't have to agree with it. The N64 sucks, and your memory sucks.
Do you ever feel like a cranky old man? Because I do.
Yeah.
I get real cranky about this, and sometimes I catch myself at the store. These kids coming in talking about this, and me saying what I say, which is no, it's not. It's not the greatest. Oh yeah, the N64. You guys got N64. This is the greatest system ever made. Shut up. I'll be like, well, I don't think so. I try to at least express that it's my opinion, but sometimes I feel like I'm probably that cranky guy at the video game store.
Yeah.
When I should just be like, you're right, buy all these fucking games, get them out of my store, because I hate them. So.
Well, yeah, and controllers are rare because everybody has to buy 4 controllers.
Because they're all crap.
Well, yeah, and the analog stick.
GoldenEye.
Yeah. Well, the analog stick didn't have the longevity. That thing was designed to just shave itself to nothing.
Play enough rounds of Mario Party, quite possibly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you have to grind it in a circle.
Yeah. Which, I hate that game anyway, so I don't... I'll give the Nintendo 64 a couple of things. I enjoy Ogre Battle, which...
I haven't played that one, but I guess it's one of the rare games for the system.
It is. By rare, it's at one point it was up to $40. I don't know, there's not much on that system other than Import of Sin and Punishment that's worth anything, so... But...
StarCraft even?
StarCraft is about the same as Ogre Battle.
I know that Nintendo... a lot of people try to get Nintendo 64 sets because there's only a couple hundred games.
Yeah.
260 or so.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
And then there's a few rental only Blockbuster exclusives that are kind of hard to find, I guess.
Yeah.
No.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there were.
I'll be honest with you. I've done very little research on the Nintendo 64. I know there's an Ogre Battle game for it. I know that at the time it came out, I remember playing Wave Race when it launched. My friend had a Nintendo 64, but I remember going home and playing my PlayStation and actually enjoying myself.
Yeah, I think I was in college when it was out, and I think the consensus was the PlayStation was the way to go. I kind of was a dropout in games at that point because the machines were so expensive.
Yeah.
I kind of just collected records instead because it was too much.
Well, you had to find some way to be a hipster. So.
Oh, yeah. They weren't hipsters yet in 1990s.
Right.
But I think the thing is, I spent a lot of time with my N64.
But you're younger than us.
So, I am.
Are you younger than us?
Well, no, I guess you two are the same age.
For the record, I'm 31, about to turn 32.
You're older than me.
How old are you?
I'm 30. So
30. How old are you?
35.
All right. So here's the thing. The reason why I really, really loved the N64 was because I liked playing Mario Party. Like, I know you said you hate it, but that was like one of my favorite games. I like the 4-player, kind of competitive
that game has
board
boom
game
detector.
kind of thing. Yeah,
I hate it. I can explain.
It was fun to play the 4-player Mario Kart and stuff like that. Like pretty much every game we played was like the 4-player game was like that was kind of like the reason why it was cool. But specifically for my friends at the time, we were really big into WCW wrestling, and the N64 had the Aki engine. Like it was by far like the best wrestling games I think of all time are still all go back to the N64. Because of the engine that they used on it. It was very open. It was very fun to play. It was very customizable. So, like, we just absolutely played the hell out of it.
I played all of those. I know, I did play all those games. I was in high school when they were out, and I was actually a helper for the physics teacher, and I worked in his back room, which meant that we just sat back there. We had a TV, and my friend would bring his N64 in, and we would play GoldenEye. We would play Mario Kart. We played a little bit, but I mainly played that at somebody else's house. And then the wrestling games. I always had the wrestling games. And I hate wrestling, but as far as wrestling games are concerned, I've accidentally played a couple other ones since then, and they were definitely better than the offerings that I've seen today.
I picked up WWE All-Stars a couple of weeks ago thinking,
Why would you do that?
Well, everybody's like, oh, it's old school, it's only 2 buttons, and it's all the old characters. I mean, design-wise, they had the right idea, but it was so mushy. There was no tactile response whatsoever. It's like, it was such a disappointment.
Like, it looked like it was going to be arcadey and fun. Like, it was going to be like kind of like the sequel to Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, which was really good. I thought that was a fun one.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, but the problem that I have with N64, and the reason why I can't, put my rose-colored glasses on and go back and look at it, with, it was a really fun experience, whatever, is the graphics were honestly really terrible. And I don't mean that from just that it's aged and, compared to the PS3, the N64 sucked. It's nothing like that. The system had that very, kind of a blurry look to it. And I didn't learn until later that the system couldn't actually, render in full screen. It rendered at 320 by 240, and they just, stretched the image when they would actually send it out to the TV, which gave it that weird, blurred, dithered look, which the PlayStation and, the Saturn didn't have. It was just raw, pixelated.
Granted, I mean, a lot of the PlayStation stuff, especially the 3D stuff, does not hold up at all.
No,
it doesn't. But
that second generation of 3D games, ugliest video games of all time, even including the Atari.
They were, but they didn't have that blur problem that the N64 had. It was a very it was
blur or no blur.
Eyes.
They were just whenever they textured those polygons, they looked like ass.
Yeah.
I prefer the flat shaded look of Star Fox or Virtual Racing or Virtual Fighter or those first generation of 3D games, and everything was flat shaded, looked like the Money for Nothing video. That's a distinct, cool art style that we're never going to see again. That reminds me of video games.
You can bring
I
it
guess
back,
Minecraft's kind of in the same category.
A little bit. I mean, it's kind of that weird mix of it's like a 16 to 32 bit.
It's got that 8-bit look to the but the polygons are very flat shaded or just
I actually think that game is beautiful, especially when you start getting some of the texture packs on there too. People have done some amazing things, but even the base game of that is beautiful. But as far as N64 was concerned, even then, it's funny. I see myself in these kids now, right? There's so much hate for the Wii, right? There's so much hate for the Wii and so much love for the Xbox. I feel like maybe that's how it was when I was a teenager. I was like, why would I buy the kids system and get this N64 crap when I can just play these awesome mature titles like Siphon Filter and stuff? You know what I mean?
That goes back to the Sega Genesis and Super NES. You guys were in grade school at the time. I was in high school though, and it was more Genesis crowd.
Well, yeah, I mean,
the SNES was the quote unquote kiddie system, and the Mortal Kombat Blood.
Except for it had good games. So.
The Mortal Kombat Blood, the Rise of the Dragon.
I do. One of my friends had
Champions.
Eternal Champions.
Well, there were mature Night Trap. I mean, it's not.
No,
they're not good. Night Trap's not a good game per se, but the fact that they were pissing people off,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not for kids. That appealed.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
people,
No, I remember that.
older
My friend had a Genesis. I remember doing the blood code for Mortal Kombat. I remember
ABA-CABB.
But you know what? I feel like there was a difference at that point in time too, because you had arcades you could turn to for all of that stuff as well. Like, I still was going to the arcade pretty heavily at that point in time, and I feel like I didn't expect my console experience to be as good as my arcade experience, or as adult as my arcade experience. Like, I remember Mortal Kombat coming out and being like, holy shit, I should not be watching people play this game.
Yeah.
I'm too young for this. Whoa! And then, like, making up excuses to my dad why I should be playing it.
I mean, it's
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. I mean, Deadly Premonition, that's all you need, so... But...
Well, I mean, so we kind of... We understand nostalgia and rose-colored glasses, but generally the N64, not a good system. Although, like at one point I'll give it, collectability, I love the fact that it's still in cartridges. That's the last cartridge system, so I still...
I'll be honest with you, collectability-wise, shouldn't you love it? Shouldn't you love disc-based more because they're easier for stupid people to break, making your stuff rarer?
Never thought of it that way.
but
I'm more of a guy that likes stuff that's less hard to break, so I like my Sega Genesis.
I was going to say...
clamshell cases instead of paper boxes.
Right.
No moving parts, the system's going to last forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The controller, obviously.
The controller is the only thing that breaks on N64s.
Yeah, unless they get cockroaches in them.
Right.
That's another reason I can hate the N64. One of the cockroach infestations at our store was spawned from an N64, so I picked it up and there were I was like, done. I'm done. Yep. I hated you before N64, and I hate you even more now.
And I'll consider it the most successful expansion add-on pack of all time, the N64 memory expansion. And it's sad, but like,
is that really like? I don't have any way to compare this, but I'm very disappointed that is the most successful.
That just shows you how a failed concept of console expansions are. I mean, look at all the CD expansions. Look at the IntelliVoice. Look at the supercharger for the Atari 2600. Look at the computer components for like the Coleco Atom. I mean, they're like, anytime they try to expand a console with an add-on, it's been a miserable failure, and the most successful one was the dinky-ass little memory expansion for the N64.
Yeah,
how many N64s at your store have the memory expansion in it, and how many don't?
Usually there are more that have them than do not.
Really?
Yeah.
So there, yeah.
I'm sorry, there are more that do not than have them, but there is a significant portion that do have them. The thing is, you have to convince somebody to buy one. They have to be buying a game that requires it. And that's how Nintendo gets around it. It's like, oh, you want to play the new Zelda game? You better have Wii Motion Plus, sucker. They did the same thing with Donkey Kong 64.
Well, right.
Perfect Dark.
That's what the Wii Motion Plus hasn't even been that successful, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I mean...
Skyward Sword.
But Skyward Sword has now made you buy that, and because that game is apparently amazing. I haven't played it yet, but it's apparently spectacular. From
I've heard mixed reaction. People love it or hate it.
Okay, everybody I've talked to that are people that I generally trust say they really
but
like it.
A lot of the people that love it are also Ocarina of Time fans, which I didn't care for.
I played that for the first time on the 3DS recently, and it was entertaining. I didn't feel like it touched. And maybe Link to the Past just as a nostalgia point for me, but I really, really love... No, I'll take that... I don't think I liked it as much as I liked Minish Cap, actually. Minish Cap was really spectacular, so...
Well, so I'll ride the other side of the fence here, because I never beat Ocarina of Time. But, really, if you go back in time and you take a look...
It's called Oot.
Get it right, bro.
If you go back in time and you take a look at the games that were coming out at that time, people didn't know what to do with 3D. Nobody really knew what to do with the analog stick, with the cameras, whatever else. They had like the fixed position. A lot of things had the like the tank controls. So they didn't even think about having separate camera controls, or whatever. Yeah. And then you get Super Mario 64, which really was like the first game that gave you intuitive, fluid camera control in a 3D environment. And it was like, yeah, that's great for a Mario game, but then still, like, nobody really figured out how to do it right for an action game. And Zelda was really the one where it really kind of, like, defined how that third-person game was going to play. Like, I definitely think that one of the reasons why it's so, like, heralded highly is because it really kind of, like, laid the groundwork for everything going forward from. Like, I think, even though, like, I can't get into it all that much, I have a hard time playing because I'm playing 2D to the 3D. I do see why people give it such a high review, and I certainly respect that it's who gave it a 10 and everything else. I don't think it's undeserving of it.
It's from a technical standpoint, absolutely, but from a playable standpoint, you took a perfectly awesome formula in the overhead 2D games. And you shat it.
It's no Adventures of Zelda.
But the problem is that we grew up with
the CDI game.
The CDI one, yeah. They did top down on Adventures of Zelda with loading screens. It was awful.
We grew up with the 2D gaming. You know, we were well invested in 2D gameplay by the time the N64 came out. So obviously, we're going to think that they perfected it because we kind of watched the awkward to really the good system getting built. For the younger generation, the kids who are 10 years younger than us, they really, kind of came into the N64, so they cut their teeth on the awkward 3D and everything, and then saw it go forward. So I think for them, it's, I can see why they see the N64 in different light than we do. Now, whether they're right or not, I certainly disagree.
Well, I mean, it's an opinion thing. I guess maybe what... I want to say this, in no way, shape, or form do I think that Ocarina of Time was a bad game.
No.
By saying that I didn't like it as much as Link to the Past does not mean that I did not enjoy nearly every minute of playing that game. There were a couple of really annoying, glitchy things.
The entire ice dungeon.
No, the ice dungeon was not that. I didn't have problems with that. Everybody complained about the water level.
Yeah,
the water temple. I was like, whatever. I beat the water temple in one sitting. But when I went to
by the way, Cory is a physics major in college. So just get that caveat out there.
When I got on the damn horse to get out of when you get is his name Epona?
Epona.
Yeah. To jump over that fence, that horse would not jump over the fence. And I'm one of those people, when I play a Zelda game, I refuse to look up what I'm supposed to do unless I've been stuck on it for, I used to say an hour, now I'm down to about half an hour before I'm like, okay, I've been stuck for too long and I'm losing enjoyment by not figuring out what to do. Thank God for the internet to give me guidance and strength in this dark hour. So I look it up on there. I rode that horse right at the fence. I was like, this isn't working. I rode the horse around the track 1,000,000 times and tried to jump over things. I started running over. I was like, maybe I need to run over every chicken in this place and get them flying around and chasing me to fly me out of. And then they would not. And then I looked it up, and they were like, no, you just ride over the fence. And I was like, I've done this 3 or 4 times. And I did it again, and he goes right over it. And I was like, I just wasted 45 minutes of my life because this game didn't want to do things.
And when you're 12, 45 minutes is not much.
True.
When you're 30, let's, for reference, we've been trying to do this show, the 3 of us, getting the 3 adults in this room, in the same room to record another podcast since the end of October. And it's now January 2nd.
Well,
so that's what I'm just saying. That just shows you how much time matters when you're older.
Well, but in that time, I put over 90 hours into Terraria and probably an equal amount of time into Minecraft. So
just shit on me like 2D Zelda.
You know. Well, no. So I think there is a difference in how we view things. What's interesting is that I am the youngest here, but I straddled 3D. I straddled 3D and 2D pretty reasonably because I was a PC gamer too. And so I was right there on the forefront of all of the really awkward beginnings of Wolfenstein and Doom, and then moving into Duke Nukem, and I actually stopped console gaming for quite a while. When I'm
so far ahead.
When I was
content, not just quality like it is now.
Yeah. But I mean, and that said, at that same point in time, I was playing first-person dungeon crawlers like Bard's Tale, which I mean is arguably 3D, but really it's just 2D.
Well, no, I mean that's kind of just how the evolution had to go. They had to learn how to. They had to take what they could do with 2D before they could render in 3D and try to build a 3D world.
I wouldn't say that somebody that made an Atari game would not be happy to have been able to make it look as awesome as things look graphically now if they could have.
Right.
But I don't know. The Nintendo 64 in and of itself, I don't feel had a balance of those good graphics with good gameplay.
That's the thing. They took what was already established and sold well for 10, 15 years and threw it all out the window for 3D. Like, everything.
Yeah.
They didn't even, like, compromise or, let's do a 3D game and a 2D game.
Right.
And Nintendo's struggling with that now because the best-selling Mario game on the Wii, by far...
New Super Mario Brothers.
New Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, it's 2.5D.
Wii.
Yeah.
And they will not do another one. They're just forcing people to play the 3D one. Play the 3D one.
The 3D ones are... Galaxy is awesome, though. So
But there are people that... like myself,
Right.
I'm just...
Yeah.
Or take my parents. They played Super Mario Brothers on the NES when I was a kid. They'd never touched Galaxy in a million years. And I think they'd be more apt to play New Super Mario Brothers Wii, especially with multiplayer, if we can all of us play at the same time, than they would the 3D overproduced.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole industry, I mean, really kind of took, a giant turn. I mean, everyone blames Street Fighter for being the game that kind of killed accessibility in arcades. And I
Really?
think that, yeah, because...
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it did, because Street Fighter was kind of the first game where you couldn't just walk up, kind of like, read on the instructions kind of what you're supposed to do, and just, pop in and play. Like, you had to, like, memorize moves and combos and things like that. And if you didn't go in and, like, really, really practice it and then, had to play a two-player, you couldn't keep up with anybody. And then every game after that kind of followed the same formula. You had all the different key combinations for special moves and stuff. So
Mortal Kombat 2 was the worst that I remember.
yeah, because you had the juggles and things like that.
Well,
and
two had. I remember my friends buying, like, I don't know what year Mortal Kombat 2 came out, but I feel like the internet was not as accessible at that point in
92 or
time.
93.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it wasn't really.
No.
And
Not
I
at all.
remember my friends and I being like, "Oh man, Mortal Kombat 2 is out. We're getting on this. We're gonna play the crap out of it." And we were going to the arcades, and one of my friends, Jay, bought from a guy. He was selling like manila folders full of moves printed out on a dot matrix printer.
Yeah.
Oh, does
And
he still
half
have
of,
that by any
I
chance?
doubt it. Half of them,
You need to get a hold of him and see if he still has it. That
half
would be
of them
glorious.
were wrong. Like half of them were dead wrong. Like the friendships and like all that stuff. Like because nobody knew what they were yet.
Yeah.
Except for the people that made it, and they weren't releasing strategy guides for games that were out in the arcade.
Exactly.
So those things were things we didn't even get to learn. And that was exciting for me. Maybe that was off-putting for other people, but, I mean, I feel like Street Fighter, I was young enough playing that game, I didn't care whether I knew how to play it, you know what I mean? I wasn't, like, trying to competitively beat anybody's ass at it. I was just like, I like hitting buttons and making guys do stuff.
You could really, like, button mash. That was where, like, anybody could just walk in, mom, dad, guy on lunch from work, whatever. I could just walk into an arcade, throw a quarter in, and play, any of the traditional arcade games.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, in Street Fighter, you can't do that. You've got the big increase in buttons. You've got the 6 buttons you've got to do. You've got all the specific key, like, joystick combinations and everything. And as it progressed, like, that kind of, like, defined that you really had to know what you were doing if you were going to go in and play an arcade game. On the same side of that, on the console side, as soon as we hit 3D and we go from having, like a D-pad and like 4 face buttons and maybe a couple triggers in Super Nintendo or whatever, but usually kind of, a D-pad and 4 usable buttons, you get into these, analog sticks, D-pad, multiple triggers, multiple face buttons, like, 20 button controller or whatever. You can't just throw that in someone's hand and go, here's how you play. You press this button, hold this button, then press this button to do this or whatever. It's, you lose that.
As much as people will hate to admit it, especially people that listen, that people like us, people that love the hobby for whatever else, whatever's considered hardcore, that audience will always die off. That they'll choke themselves off from accessibility. It won't grow. It'll die. In the early 80s, hardcore games were like the hardcore arcade games and the hardcore computer games. So like Defender was what all the cool kids played in 1980, whereas how many people know who Defender is now versus how many people know what Pac-Man is?
Yeah.
Pac-Man was the little kiddie game. And Pac-Man endured. Defender is kind of like, oh, that was cool, but few people will put up with it, especially the way with the buttons instead of a joystick. And
Yeah.
So then you had computer games. That was like the mature people played computer games. Arcade games are for the stupid kids. And those early computer games, like the simulation type things from the early 80s, and I can't even think of any.
Well, even on the console side, maybe like when you think back to the Intellivision,
exactly,
Utopia was fantastic and it was
Exactly.
hardcore, but
Intellivision doesn't endure because I'm an Intellivision fan. That's what I grew up with. It tried to be the smart, the learned person. It was basically a hybrid of a computer and a console. It had the quote unquote dumb arcade games like Burger Time, which is incredible, but then it
it is. I'm not laughing at you.
But it when it first came out, it was like, well, here's Sea Battle, here's Sub Hunt, and so you get these really crude submarine simulations and like a sea battle simulation, right, to move your battleships and your cruisers and all these other ships to in like 19th century Napoleonic warfare simulation type games, and it was that stuff did appeal to a certain segment of the population that's smarter than average, but the lack of accessibility makes it virtually impossible to enjoy today.
Yeah, and it doesn't define what the best of that generation was.
And fast forward, and then in the 90s, fighting games was the hardcore gamer, and look at it now; it's niche as hell.
Yeah,
it is.
Capcom only can make a profit if they release 17 versions of the same game every year.
Well, they've done that.
That's the only way they can make a profit, though, is to get those hardcore people to spend a few $100s rather than getting 100 people to spend $50 one time.
Yeah, and they've been more aggressive about it recently. I mean, we've been getting, before we had to wait a couple years for Alpha 2, things like that. And now they're doing, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, came out last year, and
now we have Ultimate
Marvel Capcom 3,
And then you have to. Don't you have to? I don't know anything about this because I actually did not. I had to stop playing fighting games. But isn't that? Didn't they start charging for extra characters too? You could buy new characters.
Yeah,
there
were DLC characters.
Yeah,
and I don't know. I think King of Fighters is just costume packs. I could be wrong. I don't know if they have.
You can ask Dave.
See, we're not hardcore enough.
No, I had to get they make me too angry, and I don't like being angry, especially.
What's the most popular fighting game? What you would think right now, like among everybody that plays fighting games?
It's probably still Street Fighter 4.
Yeah,
I was going to say Super Smash Brothers Melee.
No, that's died off. Brawl killed the popularity of that.
Really?
Yeah. Which is funny because I thought Brawl was good.
Would you agree then that Melee was probably the most popular for a good 5 years?
Until Street Fighter 4 came out, yeah.
When Street Fighter really lulled down, they were just re-releasing old versions and the newer systems and stuff.
So 4 really got that big?
Oh, 4 got huge.
Really big. Especially in the tournament circuit and stuff like
that. But that's what I'm saying, the tournament circuit is the hardcore kids. I mean,
it is, but it increased the tournament circuit by 4 or 5 times what it used to be.
Yeah, so you were talking about the documentary you saw I want to see now on Hulu.
Yeah. I was expecting to see Brent every 5 seconds, but he is the classic example of this, and there's nothing against him because I see myself reflected in this every day. But he and I both started playing fighting games. We both got into it pretty heavily. We started running tournaments at the store, had a lot of fun. Around here's a Seasons Beatings that was going on every year. Justin Wong would come there and play, which, if anybody cares, is a really good Street Fighter player. Actually, just about all the games he places in, Guilty Gear, all that crap. But, so, I mean, there's 200 or 300 people in there. This is before Street Fighter 4 came out.
Right.
And when Street Fighter 4 came out, we both bought it. I went over to his house to play it, and I played it a little bit on my own. I was like, I kind of like this. And then I was playing with him. We played for 4 hours straight, and he was like, I really don't like it. I was like, really? Why not? He's like, I don't know. There's something different about it. And I was like, let's put in Third Strike. And I put in Third Strike, and I was like, yes, I like Third Strike. I love Third Strike. I don't like Street Fighter 4. And that was because I'm really used to Third Strike. Mm-hmm. I kept trying to parry in Street Fighter 4. You cannot parry. Mm-hmm. So, we go back and forth on this, and I decided it was just the timing is different. It's because I'm not used to it, and I haven't put 300 hours into this game.
Well, and you can't gauge things at, pixel distance anymore. You have to really, take into account the character distance and everything.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just different.
Again, we're having a hardcore nerd conversation that's going to turn off everybody listening to this that's never played these games.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying. Whenever you have a hardcore audience, the barrier of entry is so high.
Yeah. But
that nobody knew was going to join up, and then your game is going, your hobby is going to die off. It shook itself off.
Right. But I'll bring this back. I'll bring this back to my initial discussion here, which was Brent went very hardcore. He will only play Marvel vs. Capcom 2. That's like his thing. MVC2, that's the only thing he'll play. And we tend to kind of hold on to these things that we know or we're used to. The new things kind of bother us. And he would get really angry, and I feel like I get this way about some things sometimes when I get people coming into the store that are saying, "Oh man, Skyrim, it's the best game ever made." I'm like, I get that elitist, like, prick nerd thing going on.
But you know it. You're self-aware.
Yeah,
of it.
and Brent's the same way about Street Fighter 4 popularized fighting games again. And guess what? That pissed him off because it was his little niche thing. Mm-hmm. And then now it's popular. It's the same thing. It's almost the same thing with video games in general. And
with
sometimes
the Wii being the casual system.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, what happened, I think part of what bothers me, and I hate admitting these things to myself, but I do it all the time because I self-analyze a lot, but what I hate the most is that the cool kids are now taking away my toys. Mm-hmm. And I was not a cool kid when I was playing. Like, video games were popular, mm-hmm. but they weren't cool.
Right.
when I was growing up. And I got picked on a lot and treated like shit by jocks and shitty people at school and bullies. Now all of those bullies are on Xbox Live playing first-person shooters, which I used to love.
Yeah.
Ruining my stuff. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's such a selfish way to think about things, but I feel like maybe, especially for people with nerdy things like this, like video games and... You know, D&D will never be cool. Maybe that's why I still play it, right? But, well, But
yeah, you know, that's kind of how I am too. I mean, that's nobody on this God Green's Earth is going to give a shit about in television.
Yeah.
Except for the few hundred people at CGE last year, and
yeah,
like, you know, they went to Keith Robinson's Q&A session and stuff like that. I mean, it's and you know what, I don't know. I see both sides, and I know that you need a good mainstream to support.
My phone being on.
Is that a Jaws?
No.
Well, okay, so round, full circle, way back to the beginning. We're going to talk greatest years in gaming.
Oh God.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, if you're going to be. What I've found of collecting is I've kind of become a amateur historian on the subject. Like, okay. I'll call myself that. I mean, would you kind of agree?
I think sitting where we're at, I would say you're at least a museum curator.
Yeah,
so.
and Tatton has got a large collection too. Would you say the same thing?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'm not as good with the dates and everything. Like a lot of those details, I've got to go back and like look them up to make sure that I'm parroting the right.
But
the right
you've got a timeline in your head, and you're aware of what came first and what came next, and how this evolved, and not turn on machine and play game.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm more.
It's for stupid kids. Okay. So, and I mean, there's nostalgia covered in it too, but the fact that none of those years, except for like the Token 1980 and the Token 1991, all that stuff was N64 and later, and it was all N64 influenced. I mean, it wasn't even 95, which is the year the Saturn and the PlayStation came out.
Right. Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm not a big fan of that year, I think, because that's the year that they cut off the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo started to just do rehashes because they did Donkey Kong Country 94, and then they kind of coasted on that for the next couple years, and that was a smart business decision, but they didn't do a whole lot.
Yeah.
From that point on, and the first few years of this PlayStation were fucking terrible. The Saturn had a really shitty run. Especially that botched launch. There was nothing worthwhile in the Saturn for a long time. What was I getting at? But basically, not all those important years of the growth of the industry, and it's just, oh, here's your token year of 1980, here's your token year of 1991. Now let's talk about real games, 3D stuff. So, I mean, not even an NES year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
it's
the NES was the biggest thing on the planet. The NES was bigger than the Super NES. The NES was the biggest system until the PlayStation, and honestly, the PlayStation did not dominate the way the NES dominated. There was still a good N64 contingent the kids weren't playing PlayStation, and you can see it
Well,
by the
the parents
nostalgia.
wouldn't
There's
buy
not a
them,
lot
though.
of PlayStation nostalgia these days.
Yeah,
It's N64.
I'm one of the
nostalgia.
few. Well, no, there's not a whole lot of PlayStation nostalgia. There's a whole lot of nostalgia for Final Fantasy VII, which
Right.
is depressing and terrible. So,
Oh well, we could, like I'm.
That's a whole nother
I was on
discussion.
an episode of Bagged and Boarded a couple weeks ago that's probably yet to air, and it was originally going to be about Final Fantasy and the modern state of it. So I crammed for the podcast by playing Final Fantasy 13.
you did not like it, right? You hated it.
It's less than the sum of its parts. Let's say that.
Yeah, I like the
it's
combat
like a-
in it because my
it's-
characters can finally die in a Final Fantasy game on something other than a boss fight. So that's
That's
beneficial for me.
that's the thing. It's like, well, they kind of have something here, and the music's good, and the characters aren't nearly as flamboyant as they've been in the past, and the battle's exciting, but they kind of went beyond they kind of got too ADD with it, and being so much going on and so fast that you don't even control it anymore. It's like kind of like a potting wheel.
Yeah,
Like instead of chiseling out how you'd want to fight like a sculptor, now you're just kind of manipulating a mound of clay, sort of rubbing it how you want to town, but it's not exactly how you were intending.
yeah.
It's indirect.
Final Fantasy is even less chiseled than something like Wizardry or like some of the even more hardcore like RPGs. Even like Ultima, like the early Ultima games are really crazy. But yeah, I find that. So see, now I don't know dates and years and timelines as well as either of you do, but if I can look back on the times that I had the most fun playing video games, I don't remember the exact dates, but most of them involved either the first time I played Final Fantasy VI, and every waking hour that I played Final Fantasy VI.
3.
Yeah.
My cartridge said 3 on it. Said the box. Said the instruction booklet. Said the title screen.
I do that
I'm
because
not a revisionist.
when I'm at the store, I have to deal with the people that want to argue with the guy working at the game store, no matter what. So you have to be very, very specific about. If I say 6, you know exactly which one I'm talking about. If you know anything about the series, so. If I say 3, then I'm going to get, what do you mean American 3 or Japanese 3? And I mean, shut the fuck up. But
3 on the Super NES. Well,
Yeah.
I'm just... Okay. I wish they would have never... I wish, in the perfect world, they never would have done the split of the numbers.
yeah,
But since they did the split of the numbers, I live in the United States of America. This is what I grew up playing, so
Yeah.
I'm sticking with the American numbers.
but yeah,
And
I mean,
I'll just say 3 on the Super NES, and that should clear it up for anybody that knows what they're talking about.
Well, and now that they've gone back and retranslated them, there is actually a legitimate
Oh, yeah.
reason to identify 3 on the Super Nintendo versus 6 whatever else, because the
translation's different. And
it feels different. I mean, a lot of the stuff feels different.
I haven't played any of the retranslations of it. I'm almost afraid to revisit it, just like I'm afraid to reread Lord of the Rings, or like...
The PSP version's really good. It's really
Then I would
nice.
have to buy, like,
They
what,
did 3.
6?
They did 6 on PSP.
No, 4.
4? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. They haven't redone 6 other than on the GBA.
Which
And
is
on
really
the
And
PS4.
on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
Well, now was a straight up port
Yeah.
that they didn't change anything
Yeah.
on.
I don't
one.
think that one's really been touched much at all,
I
right?
mean, everybody
Like,
talks about redoing 7 with modern graphics,
God.
but imagine
Don't
what
make
they
me
could do
play
with
that
6
game,
with
yeah.
modern graphics. I mean, I don't know because I did. You're groaning because I said that and I realized as I was saying it that maybe that was a horrible idea. I opened Pandora's box on that one.
No. Let them redo 7 with modern graphics. Just don't let me be working a fucking video game store when they start selling it. I will kill myself in front of millions of people. Oh my god. If I have to sell Final Fantasy VII to people for $60 again, I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with those people. The people that like Final Fantasy VII,
Oh man,
they make me want to sleep.
I like Final Fantasy
Right.
7.
I like it too. That's what got me to buy a
I don't.
PlayStation. I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but I like it.
It was a driving factor in me getting a PlayStation, but my friend Nick had that, and we would pass the discs off.
Did you like 8?
I did not play 8 or 9 because of how much I didn't like 7.
Okay,
Yeah.
What about 10?
So, 10 I did play it and enjoyed.
Yeah, 10 got back to old school because it was an active time. It was everything was. I loved that system where they would show all the moves in the upper right hand corner, like who's next, and then every move that you made would change that. Like if you did a slower attack, your next attack wouldn't be for several moves later, or vice versa. If it was a quicker attack. I thought that was fantastic. And switching the characters in and out on the fly.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't do that in 13. Like, if you'd been able to switch out characters in 13, they did the paradigm shift instead, which is supposed to be the same thing, but it's not.
I mean, you can change your character's classes on the fly. Right. Actually, 13 plays a lot more like 10-2 than 10 or any of the others.
The Sailor Moon version.
Right? Hey, you know what?
My wife played 10-2. She liked it.
Yeah, my girlfriend played all the way through it. I started playing it. I was like, I actually kind of like this, but I never finished it. So part of that for me was I just really wanted the storyline out of it. But
I got really excited about 10. So I started playing because I hated Titus in the first one. And
you're like, he's gone!
And like, as soon as it's in, I put it in, I'm like, oh, look.
Spoilers. Like spoilers.
Titus is suffering in the beginning, and not only is he suffering, but now there's also, like, Sailor Moon transformation sequences. Like, this is going to be the greatest game ever.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, I remember playing, I played a lot of 7. Like, I actually beat 7. I got to the end of 7 and said, that's it. Gave the discs back and was happy to go back to playing Grandia 2. Or, you know what I mean? Like that Grandia was spectacular compared to that, I thought. And there were so many good PlayStation 1 Xenogears. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, same publisher, but just so totally different. Mm-hmm. Like the sprites in that, like that 2D with the newer...
Yeah, any of those games that had that... did that one have, like, the free rotating... like you'd hit a trigger and you could rotate completely around. I would get so lost in that shit. Like Shining Force 3 on the Saturn. Like that.
I did not play that.
Yeah. That was like you'd be in a town and you could rotate the whole map around your 2D character, but in 3D houses. And it was I never could find. My head is wired for 2D gaming and for 2D navigation, and I never
which is very fun. I do have to say, I think that's kind of funny that you always say you're like wired for 2D, and that it's too difficult for you to get into a 3D setting. But a lot of the 2D games that you play, like a lot of the Atari games, are some of the most brutal games ever created. Mm-hmm. Like you just can't beat this game. Good luck lasting 10 seconds in this game. But you get more upset getting confused on which direction you're going than dying 300 times in a row playing.
But it's a different mindset with that. Like Kaboom, you just...
Well, no, but...
that's anger. I want to beat my high score because I know I can beat 3,000 this time, motherfucker. I want that fucking patch.
But that's exactly it, though. I mean, that's the thing, is like when you can't do what you want to do in the game because the controls, the controller, the graphics, when whatever it is keeping you from doing it, that's frustrating. When it's just you not being good enough, that still gives you reason to go back and want to play more because you want to get better. But when the game, the system, the engine, when all of that stuff is hindering your progression, it's frustrating. You just want to let it go.
Like the first town in Ocarina of Time, in Oot. There's that little thing like Link goes on that little high wire from like one second floor balcony to like the little I cannot for the life of me fucking do that high wire thing with the analog stick. That I just could not do it. I tried like 10, 12 times and it just like fuck this game.
Yeah, I don't know. I had
and I pretty much quit after the first dungeon. That's as far as I got in Oot, so that's why I didn't talk too much about it when you guys were ooting about Oot.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I've just never had problems like going either way with that stuff. Like I love 3D games. Like I think that one of my favorite games this generation is Bayonetta. I played that game to death, and it's 3D complicated. I think for me though, when I see something that's complicated or I can't get it finished or something like that, I get that mindset, like you were saying about getting the score. Mine is about, I'm not going to let this fucking game beat me. Yeah. I'm not going to put this shit down. I will figure this out, and I will do it, and I will do it well until I'm done doing it. Now, the cutoff for that is fighting games, because that has a level of diminishing returns. The more you practice, you only incrementally get better every couple hundred hours.
When you're playing a story-based game like that, the end of all of your hard work is you get to complete the game. Like, you actually have some closure. When you're playing a fighting game, there's always someone better than you. There is no closure. It's a never-ending stream of trying to get better. Like, it doesn't end.
Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, back to your greatest years in gaming, though.
Way back to that.
Yeah. What I remember most, I do actually remember playing Final. I actually remember specifically my disappointment at beating quite possibly one of the worst Final Fantasy bosses ever, Sephiroth, and one of the lamest final fight scenes ever, which at the time I thought the game was beautiful. I was like, there's just nothing to it. But I do remember that. I don't know that I would consider that one of the greatest. It was innovative at the time, but for me that was definitely not.
That last dungeon. That's the thing.
You went straight down.
There was no mazes. That was the first game where there was really no mazes in the dungeon.
Yeah,
there was some exploring still, and it felt like I was exploring, and it took a long time to get through caves or dungeons or whatever you want to call it. And it felt dangerous still. Like some of them, like especially early on, they felt dangerous. I mean, you could over level yourself, and that would help.
I did love doing that.
Yeah, that's something that you can't do in. But it like you took the left path or the right path, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah,
and games since then they've even gotten rid of that. Like 10. As much as I liked it, I wanted to hate 10. I did not want voice acting in my Final Fantasy games. That was, it's like voice acting in video games.
Other than the aria in 3 and Sephiroth, or Kefka's laugh. Not
right. But I mean, like, voice acting in video games at that point was like dudes in the fucking janitor's closet. Like, the only game I even...
It's still that way for the most part.
It's still that way, but, they're a lot better now, and...
Yeah, the big
and I knew that they were going to ruin it, and, they still kind of did. Like, Titus was a fucking piece of shit, and Yuna wasn't that great. But Auron made up for it.
Mm-hmm. Auron was awesome.
I didn't care for Auron. I was like, oh, great, the big, strong dude.
I thought he was voice acted well.
He had, like, 10 lines in the whole game, too. Maybe that's why you liked him.
We'll fight about it later. But,
I do love arguing about Final Fantasy.
Yeah, but after 10, I didn't play 12 because that felt like a freaking...
I liked what I played of 12.
It's like they just stuck you right in the middle of this, epic... They give you the entire history of this country in 5 seconds, and you're supposed to, like, take it all in and immerse yourself in it. I couldn't immerse myself in that immediately like that.
I couldn't do 12. I couldn't. Like, I tried to, and it was like an hour in, and they, like, killed 2 of the characters. Like, it's been an hour, like, watching story about whatever. And I'm like, why did you even waste my time with any of this stuff? Like, now I've got to, like, learn about new characters. I remember this stuff with old characters, and I was like, I'm done. Like, I think I played 45 minutes of the game itself, and I'm just
I put 75 hours into it and didn't even beat it. So
wow,
I don't know, man. I have a tolerance for things that maybe you don't. But
I put myself through 13 as much as I didn't want to. I mean, but I treated it like a college exam, and I don't know. The first 35 hours was a tutorial.
It is, yeah. The first 10 hours is a tutorial. If they threw you into that combat system with no tutorial portion of it, you would just die. And I appreciate that.
Right.
Because if there's one thing that I like, is being able to play a game that other people can't think is too hard. So
did you like Xenosaga?
I actually... I would have liked Xenosaga if I could have gotten to any point of it where I could play an actual game. But I bought it one day, really excited because I love Xenogears, and I was like, I'm ready for another Xeno game. And I put it in, and I had like 2 hours before I had to go to work. And by the time the first cutscene was over, and I could finally get to a save spot, I had to leave for work. And I was like, I haven't played a single minute of this game. So I picked it up again, and I was just like, oh my god, I continue playing through this. I was like, I can't do this. I was working a lot at that point in time. I didn't have a whole lot of time to just, like, sit and watch a video game movie. So I do have them still. I have all 3 of them, but I just haven't gone back and played them. So I don't even know what their combat system was like.
Chris and I, forever ago, like when I first got into this, I really wanted to love it. Oh, this is going to be the coolest thing ever. And, I had all the stuff, like all the pictures of Cosmos and stuff. This is going to be really awesome. And we did like 2 hours, 3 hours or something of getting through it all, and then got to the tutorial.
Yeah.
And the tutorial was so complicated, like we could not figure out like what the hell we were supposed to do.
Oh yeah.
And I think you were still trying to figure it out, and I was like, do you just want to turn it off? Like, let's just turn it off. Like,
you know what though? It's like going back. The simplest style of games in a given genre will always end up being the most. Like Final Fantasy was kind of like the simplest of the RPGs. Battle like what used to be now, not so much now. But in Japan, Dragon Quest has always been like the big one, and that's the simplest it gets. I mean,
I love Dragon Quest though.
Did you get through 7?
No, I've started 7 a couple of times.
Did you get to where you got to into a battle at least?
Yeah, it was about 3 hours in. Yeah, it was about 3 hours in when I got to the battle.
But we were talking before we started recording, like the most popular RTS of all time is StarCraft, and that most people say, "Oh, that's too fucking simple."
Yeah,
and so that's the most popular. Fighting games, Super Smash Brothers is probably the most popular, and it was probably the most simple. It didn't have like reversals and
see a lot of those games
combos and
you've got the people that play the game and don't know that it's actually highly competitive, which is breaking down now because of online for fighting games,
right?
But Street Fighter at its core, when you look at Street Fighter, I think a lot of people look at it and go, all right, I've got 5 special moves and 3 punches and 3 kicks. Let's do this. I'll beat the shit out of you. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And people play it and they get good in their bedroom and then they try to play it online and they get decimated.
Trashed.
And the second that happens, you're done playing it. Or you're like, I'm going to beat these people. I am not competitive by nature. So when I get beaten, I get angry and throw things and curse. So that's when I almost broke my arcade stick over not Arcana Heart, BlazBlue.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm done. I could actually feel my heart beating in my chest. When I won, I was screaming and cursing at the television screen. Fuck you motherfucker! I fucking God! And I was like, why? I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play Dragon Quest. It's cute. Akira Toriyama artwork. There's slimes, and I don't get angry. Some people thrive on that though, and that's great for them. But I mean, I think that's a similar thing with like the Call of Duty crowd too. You know, it's you've got to have this. They've got this aggression that they love beating people,
right?
And I think if we could channel all of those kids away from first-person shooters and into fighting games now, then first-person shooters might have a chance of having a story again. So, because the multiplayer is fun, but man, I miss playing Doom. Doom is evil. That game is so great.
Oh shit! What was it? Well, I think the apex of, another thing. The most popular RPG now I'm thinking about is probably Pokemon.
Oh yeah, Pokemon's spectacular,
and it's extremely simple, but super deep and complex. It's not.
Yes,
it's easy to get into. You fight, you run, you use special move. That's it.
Yeah,
but you have 300 different characters, and
and from there it gets even more.
I'm not a Pokemon fan, but I appreciate where it came from and why it's what it is, and
I appreciate all the kids who really like look back on that. With
wish when I was a kid I could have gotten something that deep. I think the deepest thing I ever got into was baseball cards.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a bunch of cards you buy. Well, then you learn all the baseball teams. You learn like the specifics of baseball,
what the stats mean on the
what
back,
the stats mean
like that.
Exactly. That's how you become a baseball nerd. Was baseball cards, and now they're no longer $1. I mean, when I first bought baseball cards in '86, they were 35 cents a pack, so you could buy 3 for $1 basically.
Yeah,
and go from there. Now a pack of baseball cards, God, what, $2? I'm sure.
I don't even. Do baseball cards still exist? That's how
exactly. Like comic books is the same way. I didn't get into comic books because I couldn't go around to the corner store and buy them.
I was way into comic books.
Where'd you get your first one?
Well, my dad would take me to the comic book shop. My dad was desperate to find something that I would get into as a kid. So, he tried baseball. The first time we played catch, he hit me in the face with the baseball, and then I subsequently got hit 2 or 3 more times that season with a baseball. So I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's like, all right, you want to collect stamps? I was like, sure. So I started trying to collect stamps, and I'm like, I don't really give a shit about stamps anymore. And so then it was comic books. He's like, maybe my son is a nerd. I think that's what he had. He was like, maybe my son will like comic books. So he would take me. He got me a poll at at Hawkeye's Comics in Springfield, which is no longer there. I ended up working there as my first job for a week. But I mean, I got really into comic books. And I still have a lot of my comic books from that time. I don't think... I'd like to get rid of them in the sense of, saving space, but I can't, because it's kind of the thing my dad and I did together.
Yeah.
So, and I still love comic books, but, again, they get too expensive.
Right. I mean, when you were a kid, how much were they?
God, I don't even remember. I spent a shit ton of money on them.
Less than $1, though, right? Now they're like $2.99, $3.99.
We were like what?
I don't know because I never.
Yeah, maybe. But now they're like.
Did you get yours at a store though, or did you get them at like the grocery?
No, I'd get them from. We had Central City Comics, which was the one that I used to always go to, and then we had Shock Comics, which was the like kind of the bigger competitor. Like Shock ended up winning for a while, but Central City was like way more personal.
Okay, that's the thing. Like comics are dead now because kids can't get a hold of them. Right?
That's not really so true. I mean, comics are still really big. I mean, it's...
Comics are big because of movies, but the books themselves are dead.
No, definitely not. Like
the nerds support it, but it's not mainstream. All the kids are into it.
Yeah. I don't know that it's...
I mean, I don't... And again, I think...
And video games are going down that same path, by the way.
Depends on what you consider mainstream. I mean, like... I figure comics are probably still where they were when we were kids, as far as like the people who read them and everything.
Yeah,
but
they haven't grown.
But grown to the sense of grown with the population growth. Like I think if you were to take the percentages of total population in an area and the population of who were into comics and did the same math with now, it would probably be similar. I don't know that it would grow or decline kind of either way.
You know, my kid's only 2, so I don't know what all the 2-year-olds are reading these days.
Well,
I just don't see kids with comic books.
I know a lot of people that are out of it just because of the cost, though. I know a lot of people, like one of the guys I work with, he's like, what, you know, he's like, I just can't afford, he's like, I got a kid now, guess what, I can't afford comics, because, you know, you would get, my poll was, I was paying $50 a week for my comics, and I was a teenager.
Right.
And I had a shit ton of books in there.
Yeah.
But $50 a week is... I can't even think about spending that. $200 a month I spent on comic books for a significant portion of my life. There's no way I can spend that now, and now they're even more expensive than it was then.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's now. I mean, I think DC has the cheapest books. I think they've locked themselves at like $2.99 a book. But, like, you know, most everyone else, IDW, the Marvels and stuff, are, like, $3.99 and $4.99 a book. They're still full of ads and everything else. So it's not like, you know, it's a better reading experience.
Comics became because they were super cheap to print, and kids could buy them. Mm-hmm. Like, they would spend a nickel or a dime or a quarter or whatever. It was affordable to kids on paper route money or allowance money.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case anymore.
No. You gotta be a collector now.
Right. It's like you got a hardcore set of which is... Again, it's the hardcore versus the quote-unquote casual. Without a strong mainstream casual market, your hobby will wither and die.
And sometimes it doesn't even seem like they're trying anymore.
It'll end up like those dudes that run the Atari group for Columbus. You know, they're very dedicated. I love what they do, but you know, they're not going to get a whole lot of new members in the coming years.
It's actually a weird side note from that. One of the guys that comes into the library where I work, he's a professor, and I was talking to him about... Somehow I got on the subject of my girlfriend and I were thinking about making our own, like, Muppet-style puppets at some point in time. He got so excited to talk to us. He's part of a puppeteering guild. Oh, he was like, we're dying. We really need new members. Like, he was like, please, like, if you and your girlfriend would come, I'll get you the information. Like, you should come. They'd be so happy to have new people. And it's like, I wonder at what point that's going to happen to, like, my hobbies.
Yeah.
Where I'm going to be that old guy sitting there being like, not that this guy's old, but just being like, I love this thing. I'm so passionate about it. Nobody gives a shit anymore.
Think about, like, moose clubs and Shriners and...
Well, and
like all those groups when I was growing up, like, what do adults do these days? I don't think that all that shit's gone. It's got to be.
Yeah. Well, that is going to be us, because we're going to be the ones who, you know, of all these games that are surrounding us here in Chris's basement and everything, we're going to want to get the system out, hook it up, and play it, and all of our grandkids are going to be like, I can play it on whatever the current system is. I just go and re-download it or whatever, or you know, maybe at that point it'll be in like an open system where you can just go and get to them. Like, I can't remember what the abandonware PC gaming place is that has all the old... there's some place that has a bunch of like games that aren't really owned by anybody anymore. You can just go and download them all for free and play them. And it's like trying to play those now without the right sound cards and everything. They don't have the same charm or whatever. Like that's what's going to be like for us.
Yeah, I want to play. I want to play Bard's Tale again so bad, and not this newfangled 3D top-down Bard's Tale crap that they did for the PS2. I want to play First person dungeon crawler, Bard's Tale 2. That was like my shit for like months, and I tried to download DOSBox and run it, and it lags. Like,
it's
why?
not the same, yeah.
And even if I got the music to play, yeah, you're right. It just doesn't sound the same if it's not coming off like it's coming out of these new speakers with a subwoofer and stuff.
And it's trying to emulate the older sound and everything, and it's really, in effect, it's making it better than what it was.
Yeah,
we were playing.
It's not the same though.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's tough. Like
it's like playing something. It's like playing N64 games on the Wii, because the Wii doesn't do the 322/40, hold the scaling crap. It actually like renders it in 640 480. So the N64 games actually look really good when you get them on Virtual Console.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's night and day compared to that.
Unless they put, and I am not nostalgic enough to. I am very nostalgic. I've been trying to break myself with this, but if they made available, like, I know none of the Saturn stuff will be made available.
No,
but if they make all of my PS2 and PS1 games and my Super Nintendo games that I want to play and like all those things available in a digital format, I would love to save the space. I would love to save the space. That's probably heresy to you two, but
yeah, I think this is podcast over.
but I do love having I like my special editions of stuff. There's things I won't get rid of. I won't get rid of any of my Shin Megami Tensei stuff. I won't get rid of any of my working design stuff unless it's going to a good home and I know that. It doesn't really bother me anymore. Like, okay, I'm not going to play this in the next 5 years. But my PS1 stuff, I love having those cases. But, if Suikoden 2 ever goes Virtual Console, or, PlayStation Network, I might consider selling mine just
it's a lot of money.
For simplicity. Yeah, and it's just, for me, it takes up a lot of space in my very, very small apartment. So, and it's like, I get the talk from Molly every once in a while where she's like, I feel like we still have too much stuff. And I'm like, I'm trying.
Yeah, you just have to move out, lady.
Yeah, right? You have a whole crafting room that you don't use. But
so anywho, 1991, my best year of gaming. You.
I'm going to be close to that, but I'm going to probably say 94. And I think the reason I'm going to go to that is...
No, what year of gaming?
Year of gaming? I will say, I know this is kind of a weird... I don't remember the year, because I don't have these...
What title makes it the game of the year, and then we'll figure out the year.
Yeah, what era?
It's a very personal thing for me. It was when I got my Game Boy, the original Game Boy.
So that came
89.
out in 89, and then you got it right away or later?
I got it for Christmas that year.
The year it came out?
Yeah, so 89.
It's probably 89. And you did not have it, that's personal for you, which is fine. That's what we're kind of... Okay, now that we have our personal years, I think mine's more of a... 91, I say, is big for me, but I didn't buy a Genesis right away, because I got a Super Nintendo first, believe it or not, and I got it soon after it came out. We traded in a bunch of our Nintendo games for it, and I wasn't that impressed with Super Nintendo. I mean, Super Mario World was alright. We rented a lot of... I got Final Fantasy 2, I rented that like 50 gazillion times, because that was like $80 at the time, so we didn't buy that one.
Yeah.
But that's my favorite Final Fantasy, because of nostalgia mostly, you spoony bard. But... I got a Sega Genesis in 92 or 93. So we had both. And I was way into the Genesis. And that's kind of... But I'll say 91 because that's the year the Genesis came... Or that's the year it grew up with Sonic. I mean, because it came out in 89. And my cousin had one. I loved it. But that's like, we had to drive 2 hours away to go play it.
Yeah.
Wasn't that into it. But I recognize historically... The 91 is the year that Sega came into its own and was the number one company and beat Nintendo finally, and so that's why I'll say 91. Even though personally it was probably like 94. When I bought a Sega CD, I bought a 32X. I was like, oh, this like I'm into everything right now. Final Fantasy 3 came out that year. Phantasy Star 4 came out that year. So my personal year is 94, along with a lot of other things. The year I graduated high school, 94. First time I was on the internet. Clerks comes out, Pulp Fiction comes out, the Gen X ideal starts to become its own. It was burgeoning after Nirvana came out in 91. So I say 91 is like a gaming historical year, but personally you're 94.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's...
So you say the year you got your Game Boy as your personal year.
That's my personal year because my parents refused to get me video games until that point.
And I've heard that story.
And I would say that my second to that was when I got my Super Nintendo.
Now, can you think of a historical time then, you think? That, like, what would be the most important? Or...
Like, important how... I feel like... I personally feel like it's hard to really tell what's important, because I don't think video games are going anywhere anytime soon. In general, right? And we have this tendency to say, oh, that's so old school, or this is, like, vintage or retro or whatever. These really aren't that old.
No.
Like, in the grand scheme of things. So, I don't know...
But they've evolved so much.
They have.
Like most things in our lives don't evolve that much.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
The chair that you could be sitting on a chair that was built 50 years ago. My daughter's crib was a third-generation crib.
Yeah.
This table that we're recording is third generation. My mother had this table when she was a kid. I had it growing up, and now my daughter uses it. So now I'm putting our podcast stuff on it. But,
sodas.
Things don't change generally, but something like computers and video games, that's an anomaly for most people.
Yeah. Well,
like throughout human history.
Yeah. I think it's hard to say. I mean, other than, like, the advent of gaming itself, like the beginning of gaming itself,
right?
It's hard for me to really even say what has been the most important, because that's based off of what's been the most important is what's the most important now. And what's the most important now is Activision putting out the same fucking game every year. You know what I mean? Right. So maybe what's most important.
You're going to be cynical and say 2011,
right?
Say it. Just
like,
put your name on it.
No, I think that I would say the last great date in gaming would be the last time I felt like there was a significant amount of variety and quality in what we were playing, which I don't think... I think that was PS2.
That. I was going to say the Sega Dreamcast.
Dreamcast? You're such a Sega nerd. Such a Sega nerd. It was the last... Yeah. Dreams died with the Dreamcast,
yes,
so the world was over. I mean, the Dreamcast was great. I really enjoyed it. It was a good system, but...
And I didn't like the Saturn, so I will...
I feel like we lost a lot of our variety right around... Like, the PS2 was, like, the last era I felt like I had so many different things to play. And then the Xbox existed. So I would say the Xbox was the advent of the popularization of video games to a ridiculous degree. The advent of first-person shooters and online gaming, which... Although I love online gaming, I think has changed the direction of the industry more than anything else. So I would say the year Xbox Live launched, whatever fucking year that is,
all right,
is probably the most important one we've seen.
What's your historical year then? Not your personal favorite, or was 94 your personal favorite?
94 is my personal favorite. And although I could argue that it's historical, I was actually going to say the same thing as you. I was going to go 2007. Because that was the point when on the DS, online gaming had really kind of... They figured out what they wanted to do with it and everything. They kind of got enough games that you could work with it well. I thought Xbox Live was actually pretty terrible when it first came out. Like on the original Xbox, I thought it was pretty horrible. But it refined itself very well on the 360. I think it defined itself very well on the 360. And by that time, the Wii was, on its way out. The PS3 was on its way out. And they kind of, to a lesser extent, pulled what they could from, like, Xbox's model for that. And, thinking back to being a kid and, even though it's nowhere near the economic uncertain times of today, but, just
call it a fucking depression. He's not being politically correct about that.
No, I remember growing up a lot around the Dublin area, which people have too much money, people spend way too much money. And there were so many cases where I had, friends and stuff who had to move away because their dad lost their job or get a new job or somewhere else, whatever. And at the time, it's a complete loss of contact to that person. The internet wasn't around. It couldn't play games with them that I used to be able to do and have them over and play games or whatever. And being able to now, as a kid, be able to, lose your best friend and still be able to go out and, and play Xbox with your best friend and everything. Like, I think that's a really big deal. The problems that I have with the gaming of today, I blame on developers more than I blame on the backbone and the arc of what they built. Like, they actually I think they've built really good systems and and a really good backbone for gaming, and the developers are stale and just recycling the same things over and over again.
Well, yeah, they got kind of taken over. I don't want to say they got taken over by big business, but it definitely, like, those big companies have figured out how to milk. And I blame Madden for that, but...
Yeah, I agree.
Nintendo's the last gaming, quote-unquote, company left in the business.
Yeah, like, there's a company that makes a console that
has its roots in actually making video games rather than just doing other things and adding a video game division.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like my personal reason for 94 was the last time that I was really excited about video games. So
look at those magazines from back then.
Look
at a copy of stupid Game Pro, which everybody hates now, but holy shit, when I got the Christmas issue of Game Pro and it was like 400 pages, it was that day.
Oh, yeah, those were serious, yeah.
And that was the thing.
And even the ads were fucking badass. I mean,
I couldn't get enough video game magazines because, the internet wasn't really around. Like, I was getting on, like, the Columbus Online, like, bulletin board service, which is where I got, like, my Mortal Kombat 2 would be, like, moves list and stuff. But it was EGM, it was EGM2, it was Die Hard Game Fan, it was Game Pro, it was Next Generation magazine, which was really, really cool when it came out, because it was the only one that really, like, started getting into telling you, like, technical specs and processor speeds and engineering stuff and whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was the time that, the consoles were getting to a point that they were giving you an arcade, really close to an arcade experience at home. Mm-hmm. And what they weren't delivering now, the magazines all had, all these new systems coming out that could deliver it. And, the arcade industry was at a point where it realized that as soon as the consoles caught up to it, its business model was gone. So they were starting to get into, the bigger arcade machines, ones with special controllers. You'd have, like giant guns. You'd sit in, like, big ride-on machines and stuff like that. It was like the birth of the GameWorks, the Dave & Buster's, everything was kind of starting to get formed at that time. Yeah, it was a big, I think it was a big, exciting evolution point for gaming.
What year was Gauntlet Legends? Because that was the last game I remember playing in the arcade obsessively. Like, $20 bill into the token machine at Putt-Putt.
Wow.
All $20 into that game until I beat it. Yeah, and your character saved locally on that machine.
Yeah.
So you go back, put in your stuff, and then, like, have your character there. I'm like, look, my character's on big head mode because I beat Scorn.
Yep.
Suck my balls. But yeah, no, I agree. Like, yeah, that was a lot.
So we actually agree with the consensus. We kind of agree with the article after all that historically, the more modern stuff is more important.
I think we agree with the article, but for very different reasons. I think the reasons that the article picked out and the reasons we picked out are different. I think,
but the article was kind of a one-off. Like, these are the best games that came out this year. These are the best games that came out this year. And
yeah, the article was
Ood is the best game of all time. Therefore, 1998 wins. And
yeah, like
Gen 64 for the win.
No offense to Ben or whatever the guy's name was who wrote it. But the article was really kind of superficial. Like, it was really. Yeah. It was just, here's a bunch of AAA titles, and this is what defines what games are.
Maybe that's even what he was going for, was like, okay, if you look at it this way,
please troll my blog.
Yeah. And, AAA, he did, like I said this earlier, he put Ico down there, and that makes me happy that he at least had that down there. So, that game is spectacular, and, I'm definitely a PS1, PS2 junkie. That was when I really had a lot of free time to play a lot of games. So I was making good money and had a lot of time off. So nostalgically is different, and I think that's possibly what catches up that N64 stuff is a lot of the people that are buying this stuff now. A lot of people that are buying games now are informed by that nostalgia that they had. That's what they played. And so it's easier for them to make that 3D transition, whereas maybe you can't, and it was not that bad.
And, I probably could if I really wanted to, but I just... Well, I've got 4,000 video games down here, and that's the fallacy or the paradox of choice is when you have that many choices, you're not going to settle for second best. You're going to take A only. You're not going to play too much B stuff and really super get into it. I'll sit down and play anything for half an hour.
Yeah.
But to make me sit down and, go through it... Yeah, I gotta really enjoy it. Yeah, and I'm a lot more likely to play for half an hour on any Atari game.
Yeah,
big deal. That's what you're supposed to do with it.
Yeah, and I read the pencil stuff because, I prefer 2D. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I love the DS is because there's so many great 2D games on the DS. It's fantastic. But I also, I like a lot of 3D games. Like, there's a lot of 3D action games I like to play, and there's a lot of first-person shooters I like to play. The thing that really has turned me off of first-person shooters as of late, and the reason why I don't play them, is because, like you were saying earlier, all the jocks are playing the first-person shooters, and I hate it. Like, anytime I go online, I get destroyed instantly. Someone is a complete jerk to me. I get 1,000 racial slurs thrown at me. Yeah. I just take the disc out. It goes on the shelf, and I pull something else out that's fun.
I mean,
that's not fun to me.
Yeah, to me, what made, like, I did play Modern Warfare 2. I really liked Battlefield Bad Company 2. And what made those games enjoyable to me, well, for the most part, the Battlefield crowd is not as bad as the Modern Warfare crowd, because
that requires teamwork, though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, but more so than any of the team versions of the Call of Duty games.
It's the Wonder Pets of modern.
But
sorry, I got a 2-year-old.
But what I would do is I would turn on my Xbox. I would mute everything. I would mute all voice chat. And just play the game online like I was playing a first-person shooter, like I was playing, like, Unreal Tournament. You know what I mean? Like, the Unreal Tournament, not Unreal Tournament 2004, like,
just regular Game of the Year edition Unreal Tournament.
Yeah, and just play it online and get decimated or decimate people without getting caught up in their bullshit and their yelling and screaming and whatever they're doing, as long as they're not cheating. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'll die. I'm bad at this game. I'm really bad at this game. That's fine. I'll die 1,000,000 times and I don't care. Until I have to hear your little squeaky voice yelling the N-word at me for 4 hours. Or, like, I have to hear you playing music through your Xbox. Like, what is that even about? Why do I... Yeah, people yelling at me. You know what? I'll go do my own thing, and I'll die a lot doing it, and I'll have fun, and screw you. So that's the only way you can do those things, because if you turn on that voice chat...
Well, and that's the sad thing, is because, like, before the reboom of fighting games, I had gotten Xbox Live when Halo 2 came out. It was actually right before. I got the Dead or Alive. Mm-hmm. And played Dead or Alive online. It was okay, whatever.
Yeah.
There's still, that was the first time where I'm like, this is going to be great, I can play online. And then the first time you get called the N-word, it's like, I want to log out. Like, I hate this. This is the worst thing in the world.
I'm going to call that first time I played poker.
I know.
I played online poker on Xbox Live at your house, and I got called a nigger Jew after a hand of poker. Microsoft lost a customer for life after that shit. I hope anybody's listening. Just saying.
But, like, the thing is, though, is, before the fighting game boom, I had... SNK versus Capcom, SVC Chaos.
Yeah.
And loved it, adored it. Like, it's still one of my, like, favorite fighting games. It's so much fun. I bought, like, the special edition Street Fighter controllers that they came out with, so I was, like, really enjoying it, played it all the time. I think the highest point I got to was ranked, like, 667, of everyone. And I think at the time there were only, like, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people who were really, like, playing it online, who were ranked in there.
Yeah.
But I got to play the guy who was ranked number 2. And admittedly, I will admit, anyone who's listening who plays Street Fighter, I play as Ken. I'm sorry. I love it. It's my favorite thing. I don't care. I like Ken, and I know it's cheap, and I don't care. I like it.
It's alright. I played Chun-Li in Third Strike, so... But
I played the guy who was ranked number 2, and we played a couple matches, but we were actually able to like talk back and forth. And the guy was super nice. He was very humble. We both got excited when either one of us won or lost. And he was like, he's like, for the next one, he's like, this might throw your stats off because I might win it. But he's like, well, let me show you something. He's like, go ahead and pick this person or whatever. And so he had me pick some things. He was like showing me how to do like a couple different combos with a couple different other people and whatever. And it was a really cool kind of a personal experience I had with this complete stranger. I have no idea who he was. Never got to play with him again. But when I was playing that, I'm like, this is what this should be. Like, this should be this fun community interactive. If it was the all nerds, all of us back in the early 90s who, could get together and be friends with each other. Like, this is what it would have been. Like, I Like, that was the thing I really had hoped for what the online was going to be like.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. No, I
like
agree.
now, like
yeah.
I haven't even renewed my Xbox Live. I get expired last year.
I
care.
renewed mine because my PS3 was because Netflix on the PS3 was so shitty until recently, and so I was like, okay, I can't take this. We're watching Doctor Who, and I need to watch Doctor Who, and I'm getting tired of it pausing partially through these episodes and getting all chunky and terrible. So I renewed my Xbox Live account with a card that Chris gave me a year ago.
I quit because I got rid of 1 versus 100. That was probably my penultimate online experience on Xbox Live. Hey, laugh. It was fucking fun.
No, it was good. They did a really good job with that.
And they canceled it
it's
because
a shame
I liked it. So
They're like, Chris likes this. Fuck that guy.
exactly.
No, you know,
guys like Chris like this.
He spends money on video games. We don't want to appeal to that guy.
well, see, and I had my online experiences before Xbox Live was even a big deal. I admittedly played EverQuest for 3.5 years, 3 of the darkest years of my life. But I mean, 3 years of intense social interaction. And nobody played that game that was not a nerd.
Right.
You know what I mean? Nobody played that game that was not fucking straight up nerd. I don't care what any of those people would say about themselves now. We were all nerds, we were all lonely, and we were all playing as elves and trolls and crap on a server on a fantasy world, and it was like D&D online for me, you know what I mean? And that was a big deal, but you just, when Xbox Live and stuff hit like that, it was nothing like that to me, and yeah, I was already checked out of it when it happened. So, you know, I was like, dude, nothing will ever beat the experience. Like, I mean, I moved across state to live with people that I met on that. Like, that's how, like, we were on there. I camped, if anybody ever played that game to any degree, I camped J-Boots for 32 hours straight until I got them. Like, that's how into that game I was. And that's actually, that was like an excellent era of gaming for me, except for it was a terrible thing for me as a person. So, but, I mean, the online experience, I'd already had my cherry popped on that, and nothing's been able to recreate that. And the closest thing I can get is playing games with my actual friends.
Yeah, and Phantasy Star Online was my title like that. I got into that huge for like 3 months when it first came out. And I kind of stopped playing because I maxed out my character. And when I came back with version 2, the hackers had taken over. It turned to shit.
Yeah,
and I haven't been back to really any online game since.
Yeah.
I think it's been a good episode, even though we barely touched on the real topic. But this is what we wanted in our podcast: was 3 guys shooting the shit about video games. So we did it. So we'll be back. Cory will be back definitely. We kind of, I don't know. We're still kind of figuring out who's the show and what's going to be about. But we'll have interviews, and Cory will definitely be back at some point. So.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for next time. I'm Chris, and
I'm Tatton. Thanks for listening.
I'm Cory.
All right. Take care, guys.
Take it easy. Yeah.
All right. Thanks again to Cory, the man of the hour. We love him. He's awesome. He's kind of the co-host who isn't a co-host. He's our physics major gamer. He's Big Bang Theory, but actually funny.
Nice.
Yeah, he'll definitely be back. And the Wii was released in 2006. Xbox 360 2005. There's your fun fact of the day, kids. Any words, Tatton?
Nope, that's all I've got. So Thanks for listening.
See you next month. Bye.
Now you're playing with podcast.
Hey listeners, this is Tatton. Just wanted to take a quick moment and let you know that there's lots of great places you can follow Now You're Playing With Podcast. We have a Facebook page set up, which is Now You're Playing With Fan Page. We have a Twitter account set up, which is NYPW Tweets, or Now You're Playing With Tweets. And, of course, all the episodes are available for download from NowYou'rePlayingWith.com. So we hope you enjoy the show. If you like it, please take a moment and send us a message. Let us know what you think about it. And we hope to have some more shows coming for you soon. Until then, thanks for listening.